By the time I reached the line in the funeral program that read, "I found an envelope at my wife's funeral," my son begged me not to open it. The words no longer felt like a title. They felt like a confession waiting for me. My wife, Emily, had been dead for 3 days, and the funeral home smelled of lilies, coffee, and wet wool from coats shaken free of February rain. People kept touching my shoulder, whispering that she had been too good, too young, too necessary for this world. Then I saw the envelope tucked beneath a stack of folded programs near the guest book, cream-colored, unsealed, my name written in Emily's careful hand. I reached for it on instinct. Before my fingers could slide inside, my 16-year-old son, Noah, gripped my wrist so hard it hurt. His face had gone pale in a way I had never seen before. "Dad," he said, almost choking on the words. "Not here. Please. Don't open it here." And in that instant, standing beside my wife's casket, I understood that whatever was inside had not died with her. "Before we go on, tell me where you're listening from." My name is Daniel Harper, and until that afternoon I believed grief had only one shape. I thought it was heavy, slow, and predictable, like winter ice thickening over a lake. I did not know grief could also be sharp, alert, and suspicious. I did not know it could stand beside your wife's casket and whisper that something in the room was terribly wrong. Emily and I had been married for 19 years. We met in college in Ohio, married young, moved twice for work, and eventually settled in a quiet suburb outside a mid-sized American city where the streets were lined with maples and every house looked like it had been built to reassure people that nothing truly bad could happen there. Emily taught 4th grade. I ran a regional supply company and spent too much time on highways, in meetings, and on my phone. We had one son, Noah, who had Emily's dark hair and my habit of hiding what he felt until it became impossible. When Emily got sick, everything in our life narrowed. It started with fatigue, then pain, then scans, then appointments, then words from doctors that sounded strangely calm for things that tore families apart. Ovarian cancer. Advanced. Aggressive. Treatable, then harder to treat. Then managed. Then not managed at all. The final year blurred into infusion rooms, pill organizers, frozen casseroles from neighbors, and quiet late-night conversations where Emily tried to make me promise I would be okay after she was gone. I always lied and said I would. The week before she died, she had been weaker than I wanted to admit. She slept often and spoke in shorter sentences, though her mind stayed clear in a way that almost made her frailty feel unfair. She noticed everything. She noticed when the mailman changed routes. She noticed when Noah left dinner without finishing. She noticed that I had begun standing in doorways, watching her, as if I could memorize enough details to defeat what was happening. On her last evening, I sat beside her bed while a lamp cast a circle of yellow light on the wall. Noah was downstairs pretending to study. Emily asked me to hand her the blue sweater folded over the chair, even though she did not intend to wear it. She simply held it in her lap for a while, rubbing the sleeve between her fingers. Then she looked at me and said, "Promise me 2 things. First, let Noah grieve in his own way." I nodded. "Second," she said, and paused long enough for me to feel a fear I could not name, "if anything confuses you after I'm gone, do not react before you know the whole truth." I asked what she meant, but she only smiled the tired smile I had come to hate because it always meant she was protecting me from something. "You'll understand when you need to." At the time, I thought it was medication, exhaustion, the drifting speech of someone near the end. When she died the following morning, I forgot those words almost immediately, because death does that. It wipes the board clean and writes only one thing across it. The funeral home was full by noon. Emily had known everyone. Former students had come with parents. Teachers stood in small clusters near the windows. My co-workers arrived in dark suits and lowered voices. Noah stayed near me for the first hour, greeting people politely, accepting hugs he clearly did not want. Then he began moving restlessly through the room, disappearing into hallways and reappearing near the back doors. I assumed he was overwhelmed. I was too numb to do more than notice. When I found the envelope, I thought first that Emily had arranged one final note to me, some private goodbye hidden in the machinery of the day. That thought lasted less than a second, because Noah's reaction was too immediate, too desperate. His fingers dug into my sleeve and he glanced over his shoulder before speaking, not at the casket, not at me, but toward the row of chairs where my younger brother, Jason, sat with his wife. "Why not here?" I whispered. Noah swallowed hard. "Because people are watching." I looked around. A few guests had turned, sensing something unusual without understanding it. My pastor was speaking softly with Emily's principal. Jason stared at the floral arrangement by the wall with such concentration that it looked deliberate. My chest tightened. "Did you know about this?" I asked Noah. He hesitated, which was answer enough. The service began before I could press him further. Music rose from hidden speakers. We took our seats in the front row. I kept the envelope in my inside jacket pocket, where it seemed to burn through fabric into skin. During the eulogy, I heard almost nothing. Emily's kindness, her humor, her devotion to children, her courage. All of it was true, and none of it mattered in the face of the questions spreading through me like spilled ink. Why would my son know about a letter addressed to me that he did not want opened publicly? After the burial, people drifted to the reception hall attached to the church. Tables were laid out with sandwiches, coffee, pasta salad, and cookies no one really wanted. Rain tapped against the windows. The room had that strained American politeness that follows funerals, where grief and logistics share the same folding chairs. Noah stayed close again, but not for comfort. He watched me. Every time my hand moved near my pocket, his shoulders stiffened. Finally, I led him into a narrow side corridor outside the coat room. There was a vending machine humming against one wall and a framed print of a lighthouse on the other. The smell of disinfectant was stronger there than flowers. Noah kept rubbing his palms against his black dress pants. "Start talking," I said. He looked suddenly younger than 16. "Dad, I was going to tell you. I just didn't know how. What is in the envelope?" "I don't know everything." "That is not an answer." His eyes filled, but he forced the words out. "Mom asked me to hide it until after the funeral. She said if you found it before then, I should stop you from opening it in front of people. She said it would destroy the family if it happened in public." My throat went dry. "What family?" He stared at the floor. "What family, Noah?" "Ours," he whispered. "And Uncle Jason's." Everything inside me seemed to shift 1 inch out of place. Jason had always been close to Emily, but in the ordinary way families are close. He helped paint our first house. He came for barbecues and birthdays. He teased Emily about her serious taste in movies and let Noah ride in his truck when he was little. There was no version of the past I could immediately reach for that made Noah's answer make sense. "What did your mother tell you exactly?" "That she made mistakes years ago," he said. "That she wrote everything down because secrets were making her sick before the cancer ever did. She said you deserved the truth, but she was afraid of what timing would do to you. She wanted the funeral to be about her life, not what she did." I leaned against the wall because my knees had lost interest in helping me. "You knew she wrote this and said nothing?" "I found out 2 nights before she died," he said. "She made me promise." "You're a child. You should never have been put in that position." "I know." The hallway went quiet except for the vending machine's motor clicking on and off. From the reception room came a burst of laughter that sounded obscene under the circumstances. I reached into my jacket. Noah stepped forward again, then stopped himself. "Dad," he said, "please. Just not where everyone can see." I nodded once. My hands were shaking now, not from grief, not exactly, but from the recognition that grief had been joined by something else, something colder. I slipped the envelope back into my pocket. "Get your coat," I told him. "We're leaving." "Without saying anything?" "Yes." "What about Uncle Jason?" I looked toward the reception room door, where my brother's silhouette passed across the frosted glass. "Especially Jason." We walked back through the crowd with practiced funeral faces. People touched my arm and told me Emily would never be forgotten. I thanked them like a man delivering lines someone else had written. Jason intercepted us near the exit, concern arranged neatly on his face. "Everything okay?" he asked. Noah stood rigid beside me. I met my brother's eyes and, for the first time in my life, searched them like evidence. "No," I said. "But I imagine that's about to change." The rain had turned harder by the time we reached the car. Noah and I sat in silence for almost a minute, listening to drops strike the roof in uneven bursts. My hands rested on the steering wheel, but I did not start the engine. The envelope was still in my pocket. I could feel the outline of folded paper through the fabric like a second heartbeat. Noah finally spoke. I'm sorry. The apology landed badly, not because it was insincere, but because it came from the wrong person. You don't owe me that, I said. Your mother does. Maybe I do too, depending on what this is. He turned toward the passenger window. She cried when she gave it to me. That softened something in me, though not enough. When? The night you went to pick up her medication refill. She asked me to sit with her. She said there were things in our family that started before I was old enough to understand them. She said she had spent years trying to bury one choice under 10,000 good ones. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand. She said that if she told you face to face, you'd spend her last days reacting instead of being with her. She didn't want that. I closed my eyes. That sounded exactly like Emily, which made it worse. The woman I loved had apparently arranged both mercy and devastation with the same careful hands. I drove us home through wet suburban streets shimmering under traffic lights. Bare trees leaned over the road. Lawns were slick with rain. It was mid-afternoon, but the sky looked like early evening. The house felt wrong the moment we entered, not because Emily was gone, though that was part of it, but because I understood suddenly that grief had been sharing space with deception for years without my permission. Our living room was still crowded with sympathy flowers and casserole dishes stacked on the dining room table. Emily's cardigan remained draped over the armchair by the fireplace. Noah hovered in the doorway while I removed my jacket, placed the envelope on the coffee table, and stared at it as if it might open itself. "Do you want me here?" he asked. I almost said no. Then I imagined what that would mean for him, after being made keeper of a secret he never asked to hold. "Yes," I said. "Sit down." He took the far end of the sofa. I stayed standing. The envelope was cream-colored, ordinary, the sort of stationery Emily bought in box sets every Christmas because she still believed handwritten notes mattered. My name was on the front in blue ink. Daniel. Just that. Not Dear Daniel. Not Danny, which she used when we were alone and things were good. My throat tightened. I opened it. Inside were 4 pages, written on both sides, and a smaller sealed note paper-clipped to the back. The first line knocked the air out of me. "Daniel, if you are reading this, then I was not brave enough to tell you while I was alive." I sat down because standing was no longer possible. Emily's letter was clear, detailed, and merciless in its honesty. 17 years earlier, during a period when our marriage had been strained by my travel schedule and my father's illness, she had a brief affair with Jason. It lasted less than 2 months. They ended it, she wrote, because the shame was immediate and unbearable. Jason begged her never to tell me. Emily wanted to confess then, but found out she was pregnant almost at the same time. She convinced herself Noah was mine. She said she truly believed that for years because it was easier, kinder, and maybe statistically more likely. Then, when Noah was 12, a school blood drive questionnaire and a later medical conversation raised doubts she could not dismiss. Quietly, without telling anyone, she ordered a DNA test using one of those mail-in services under the excuse of a family heritage project. The result suggested Jason was Noah's biological father. I read that paragraph 3 times. The room tilted each time. Noah made a small sound from the other end of the sofa. I realized then that he was watching my face for signs of what came next, as if my expression might decide the rest of his life. The letter continued. Emily wrote that she had confronted Jason with the results. He wanted silence. He argued biology did not erase 16 years of reality. He said telling me would destroy Noah, ruin both families, and poison every memory we had. Emily hated him for saying it because part of her agreed. She wrote that she chose cowardice dressed up as protection. She told herself she was keeping Noah safe. She told herself I was still his father in every way that mattered. She told herself there would never be a right time. Then the cancer came, and death turned time into a wall instead of a road. By the 3rd page, I could barely see. Not from tears alone. From rage. From humiliation. From the sudden sense that large portions of my life had been built on a floor already cracking beneath me. Yet even as anger surged, another truth stood stubbornly in the center of everything. Noah was still my son. He was the boy whose fevers I sat through, whose bicycle I ran behind, whose science projects covered our kitchen table. No paper could make me less his. But paper could still wound. The final page was addressed mostly to him. Emily wrote that Noah must never think he was a mistake or a burden or evidence. She wrote that the adults had failed long before he understood the shape of the failure.
She wrote that love and truth should have lived in the same house, and she was sorry they did not. Then she asked me, if I could manage it, to separate what Jason had done from what Noah had become. I set the pages down and looked at my son. He was crying openly now, not dramatically, just steadily, the way someone cries when they have been frightened for too long. "I didn't know if it was true until she gave me the letter," he said.
"I swear. I always thought Uncle Jason was just close." I nodded once, because words were dangerous. The smaller sealed note remained attached by the paperclip. On the outside, Emily had written, "For Jason, only if Daniel chooses." I laughed then, one hard, joyless sound. Even now she was trying to manage the blast radius. Noah flinched. "Dad!" I stood, paced to the kitchen, then back. "Did Jason know she gave you the envelope?" "No. At least I don't think so. She hid it in the linen closet and told me when to move it before the funeral." I pressed both hands against the counter. My wedding ring felt like an accusation. "I need to talk to him. Tonight." "Yes." He looked terrified. "Are you going to hit him?" The fact that he had to ask shamed me. "No." "Are you going to tell Aunt Melissa?" "I don't know." He hugged himself. "I don't want everybody to know." I looked at him then, really looked. 16 years old. Skinny in his suit. Exhausted from losing his mother and now forced to imagine losing the rest of his family in installments. I went back to the living room and sat beside him. First he stayed stiff. Then he folded into me the way he had not done since he was a child, shoulders shaking against my chest. "You listen to me," I said quietly. "Nothing in that letter changes that I am your father. Nothing. Do you understand?" He nodded into my jacket. "I mean it." "I know," he whispered. But he sounded like he needed to hear it again tomorrow and the day after that and probably for years. That evening, after Noah went upstairs, I called Jason. I told him to come over. I did not explain. He arrived 20 minutes later wearing jeans and a dark raincoat, still carrying the solemn expression appropriate to a brother mourning with family. It disappeared the moment he saw the letter on the dining room table. For a few seconds neither of us spoke. The house hummed around us, refrigerator motor, heater vent, rainwater dripping from the gutters outside. Jason took one slow breath and sat down without being invited. "So she told you," he said. I remained standing. "Not exactly. She left a letter because apparently direct honesty was too much to ask from either of you." He lowered his eyes. "Dan, do not call me that." He swallowed. "I was going to tell you." "When? Before or after we buried her?" His mouth tightened. "There was never a good time." That sentence, so ordinary, made something flash white in my vision. "You slept with my wife." "Yes. You let me raise your son." His eyes flicked upward. "He's your son. Biologically, he is yours. Biology is not the whole story." "No," I said. "It's just the part everyone hid from me." Jason rubbed both palms over his face. He had aged more in one day than I had noticed in years. "It was a terrible mistake." "A 2-month mistake? A 16-year silence? Which part are you naming?" He did not answer. The silence itself became confession layered over confession. I sat across from him because fury was making me lightheaded. "Did Melissa know?" He looked horrified. "No. Did anyone?" "No." "Did you ever tell Noah?" "Never." "Did you want to?" He hesitated too long. "Sometimes." The honesty, arriving this late, was almost insulting. "What stopped you?" "You," he said. "And him. You loved him. He loved you." Every year that passed made the truth uglier. I laughed again, but softer. "That didn't stop you from living with it." He met my eyes then, finally. "You think I lived with it?" "I lived under it. Every holiday, every birthday, every school event. I watched him become more like you in all the ways that matter and hated myself for being relieved. That should have moved me. It did not. Not enough. Emily said you wanted silence. I did. I was wrong. You were also selfish." "Yes." The plainness of that answer stripped away my momentum. Rage needs resistance.
It does not know what to do with surrender.
We sat there for a long time, two brothers in a kitchen that smelled faintly of coffee and funeral flowers, with the ruins of trust spread between us on stationery paper. Finally, I asked the question I had been avoiding. What do we do now? Jason's face broke in a way I had never seen. Whatever protects Noah most.
I should have agreed immediately. Instead, I thought of Melissa, of lies nested inside other lies, of family photos that would look different forever.
I thought of Emily choosing silence again and again until silence became the architecture of our home.
I thought of Noah upstairs, probably not sleeping, waiting to learn whether the adults in his life intended to save him or use him as collateral.
I slid the smaller sealed note across the table. "What's that?" Jason asked. "She wrote you one too." "I haven't opened it." He stared at it but did not touch it. "Take it," I said. He did, with trembling fingers.
At the doorway, he turned back.
"I know you have every right to hate me. I do hate you right now."
He nodded.
"But don't make Noah pay interest on our debt." After he left, I locked the door and stood in the dark foyer for a long time, listening to the house settle around me. Upstairs, a floorboard creaked in Noah's room. For the first time since Emily died, I understood that mourning her would not be a straight road. It would be braided with anger, paternity, betrayal, and the unbearable task of deciding whether truth set people free or simply left them exposed. The next morning began with the kind of pale winter light that makes everything look unfinished.
I had slept less than 2 hours.
When I came downstairs, Noah was already at the kitchen table in a sweatshirt, staring at a bowl of cereal that had gone soft. His eyes were swollen, and for a second he looked so much like Emily that I had to grip the doorway. "Did you talk to him?" he asked. "Yes." He did not ask what was said. Instead, he nodded as if the conversation existed in a sealed room he was afraid to enter. I made coffee, sat across from him, and tried to speak like a father rather than a wounded man.
"This is not something we solve in one morning," I said.
"Nothing is changing today." He looked up quickly. "You mean school?" "I mean your life. Your room is still your room. Your name is still your name. I'm still taking you to practice. I'm still embarrassing you with bad advice. The ground is shaking, but it's still ground." His mouth twitched for the first time in days. "That was a terrible speech." "I know. It was enough to let us breathe." Over the next week, grief became administrative. Death certificates, thank you notes, insurance calls, returning medical equipment. The cruelty of loss is that paperwork arrives before understanding. Jason texted twice. I ignored both messages. Melissa called once to ask if I needed help sorting flowers and food donations. I told her no, then sat in my car for 10 minutes wondering whether that made me noble or cowardly. Noah and I established a temporary peace built on routine. I drove him to school. We ordered takeout because neither of us had the energy to cook. At night we watched old sitcoms Emily used to mock. Sometimes he cried suddenly, over nothing visible. Sometimes I did. We did not mention the letter every day, but it lived with us like another resident. On Friday evening, Noah came into my home office holding his phone. Aunt Melissa wants to know why Uncle Jason hasn't been coming by. I leaned back in my chair. The room smelled faintly of printer ink and dust. Emily used to say this office felt like a place where joy was filed alphabetically and forgotten. What did you tell her? That you've both been busy. He hesitated. How long are we supposed to lie? The question was fair and landed exactly where it hurt. I rubbed my forehead. I don't know. You're angry at Mom, he said. Yes. You still love her. Yes. You hate Uncle Jason. Yes. You don't want Aunt Melissa hurt. No, I don't. He took a breath. And you don't want me to be the reason everybody explodes. The sentence was so careful, so practiced, that I knew he had been carrying it for days. You are not the reason, I said. Never say that again. But I'm in the middle. You were put in the middle. That's different. He looked unconvinced. That weekend I made the worst and best decision available. I asked Noah whether he wanted to speak with a therapist. He said yes so quickly it startled me. By Tuesday, he had an appointment with a grief counselor who specialized in adolescence. I arranged one for myself with another therapist because anger was beginning to shape my thoughts into weapons. Therapy did not fix anything. It simply prevented the wreckage from spreading unseen. My therapist, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and mercilessly patient eyes, told me during our second session that betrayal often creates a false urgency. You feel you must decide everything immediately because the truth arrived dramatically, she said. But some truths ripen badly when forced. I hated the sentence because it was wise. At home, Noah grew quieter but steadier. One night, while we were washing dishes, he asked, "Do you think I should know him differently now?" I knew who he meant. I dried my hands slowly. "What do you want?" "I don't know. He's always been my uncle. If I start thinking of him as something else, it feels like betraying you. If I don't, it feels like betraying reality." I rested a hand on the counter. Reality can wait a little. You don't owe anybody a new identity on demand. He stared into the sink. Mom really messed this up. There it was. Grief without sainthood. Necessary and brutal. "Yes," I said softly. "She did." 2 weeks after the funeral, Jason sent one final message. "We need to decide whether Melissa hears this from us or from the damage we do by hiding it." He was right, and I hated him for being right. That evening I asked Noah to sit with me in the living room. Rain tapped the windows again, as if weather had decided our family would only tell the truth under gray skies. "I think your aunt deserves honesty," I said. He closed his eyes. "Will she leave him? I don't know. Will she hate me? No. And if she does for even 1 second, that's her failure, not yours." He nodded, but he looked sick. Melissa came over the next night. Jason arrived separately. I had chosen the house intentionally. It was neutral enough to keep us civil and personal enough to prevent performance. Melissa sensed the tension immediately. She sat on the sofa, coat still on, and looked from one face to another. "What is this?" she asked. Jason started crying before he spoke, which I might have found manipulative if I had not known him my entire life. "I've lied to you for years," he said. "And to Dan. And to Noah." Melissa went very still. Noah sat beside me, shoulders locked. I took over because someone had to translate cowardice into facts. I told her about the affair, the test, the letter. Not every emotional detail, not every accusation, just the bones of it. Melissa's expression changed in stages. Confusion, disbelief, recognition, revulsion. At one point she stood and walked to the front window, where streetlights reflected faintly in the glass. When I finished, she turned to Noah first. "Oh, honey," she said, and crossed the room to hold him. That alone almost broke me. Then she faced Jason with a fury so clean it made mine look scattered. "You let me build a life beside this," she said. "You let me sit at birthdays and graduations and Sunday dinners carrying your lie like furniture." Jason had no defense worth hearing. Melissa left after 20 minutes, saying only that she needed space and that Jason was not to contact her unless it concerned practical matters. He stood in my entryway afterward looking hollowed out. "I deserve this," he said. "Yes," I replied. He looked toward Noah, who had retreated to the stairs. "I never wanted him hurt. Wanting and doing are not the same thing." He accepted that. Before leaving, he said something I had not expected. "I'm not going to ask for a role. Not now. Maybe not ever. That has to be his decision. And yours." It was the first useful sentence he had spoken in years. Spring came slowly after that. Snow turned to slush, then to rain, then to the first thin green along the edges of lawns. Noah continued therapy. So did I. Melissa filed for a separation. Jason moved into a short-term rental across town and, for once in his life, stopped trying to manage the emotional weather of everyone around him. He sent Noah a brief letter through me, not asking for anything, only saying he was sorry for the shape of the truth. Noah read it and put it in a drawer. As for Emily, I learned that love does not disappear when trust does. It changes temperature. Some days I remembered her laughter in the kitchen and felt only loss. Other days I remembered her handwriting on that envelope and felt heat rise behind my eyes. Both versions were real. Therapy helped me understand that forgiving the dead is harder than forgiving the living because they are no longer present to witness the cost. In late April, Noah and I visited Emily's grave together.
The cemetery sat on a low hill where wind moved through rows of markers and newly planted shrubs. We brought no flowers. Emily had always preferred usefulness to ceremony. We stood there in silence until Noah shoved his hands into his jacket pockets and said, "I miss her. I'm also mad at her." "That feels wrong." "It isn't," I said. "It means you're telling the truth." He nodded. "Are you ever going to forgive her?" I looked at the stone, at her name cut into granite, at the dates that reduced an entire complicated life to a line. "Probably," I said. "But not all at once." He glanced at me. "What about Uncle Jason?" "That's slower." We started walking back toward the car. Halfway down the path, he said, "You know you're still my dad, right? Even if we had a stupid letter and a stupid test." The words were awkward, teenage, and perfect. I stopped, pulled him into a hug he tolerated for only 5 seconds before pretending to resist. It was enough. By summer, the secret had become history rather than active detonation. Not healed. Not neat. Just placed where it belonged, in the past, with consequences still moving through the present. Jason and Noah exchanged occasional texts, carefully, without labels. Melissa remained kind to Noah and distant from the rest of us. I sold Emily's unused medical equipment, boxed her sweaters one by one, and learned how to cook 2 decent meals she used to make without effort. Life did not improve dramatically. It resumed, which is less inspiring but more honest. Sometimes I still think about the moment at the funeral when Noah grabbed my wrist and begged me not to open the envelope. At first I believed he was protecting his mother's memory or his uncle's reputation. Now I know he was trying to save me from becoming a different man in a public room. He understood, even in his fear, that there are truths which should arrive with walls around them. He was 16 and wiser than the adults who had failed him. The envelope did what Emily intended and what she feared. It shattered the performance. It did not shatter the bond that mattered most. Blood complicated our story, but love survived it, bruised and breathing. And if this story found you in a moment when family feels heavier than it should, subscribe to the channel and stay with us for more stories about the truths people hide, the damage they cause, and the way some hearts still choose to rebuild.